Hey guys, it's Selwen here, today talking about the Enhancement Shaman. Yes indeed. Like the previous preview on the Windwalker, Enhancement hasn't gotten many changes. In fact, it mostly plays the same, which is not a bad thing. Enhancement was amazing in Legion, both in gameplay and numbers. One of my favorites, in fact, at least in single target. So I guess the don't fix what isn't broken saying fits here perfectly-ish. That said, there are some changes in your talents, which seems to add even more RNG to the spec, and it's not like we need any more of that, right? As for your artifact traits and abilities, all of that has been removed. However, some things are baked into those same talents, but slightly changed, and we do notice the loss in some bad ways, unfortunately. Other changes again is kinda like the Windwalker, subtle, mainly on talents, kinda breaking the one talent beats everything like Landslide in Legion, adding some use to the others or making them more interesting, and in general add a bit more utility. That's mainly what you can expect from enhancements at this point in time. And a lot of RNG. Did I just said that already? And I'm sad to report, if you were one of those few people that saw the Wind Fury totem back in your talent tree during alpha, yeah, that's been long gone now, but Shamans are still yet to receive a class buff, so there's still some hope. That is, if we get any. So, I don't know, there's still some time in the beta to add some of those things or change, so keep a lookout on the channel for any updates. And before we get into it, I wanted to add a second disclaimer, which is, enhancements right now feels severely undertuned, as in our damage is quite shit. That on top of all the RNG that we have makes us really weak at this point in time, but I want to profess that I'm just here to talk about how is the spec feeling gameplay wise, not numbers or DPS meters. There's still time for that to be changed and tuned, hopefully. Now all of that set and clear, let's take a look at your main spells and see what has changed. So first thing you notice here is that you got your Earth Elemental back. Yep, the Fire one is still totally an elemental thing, but you got the Earth one just to serve as this tanky pet. It's not super useful, but helps with the fact that you're really squishy. So it can help out in world stuff like rares or even in dungeons as this last resort if the tank dies, although not sure how well that is gonna work out in Mythic Plus, especially higher keys. And that said, it's far from a DPS cooldown, it hits like nothing. Cool to have it back nonetheless, especially with a new, awesome new model. All the abilities that I don't mention, by the way, is because they are exactly the same as in Legion in order to save time. I'm sure you can understand that. So Bloodlust, all the same obviously, I just wanted to mention that is not on the global cooldown. All that global cooldown nonsense is actually not that bad now. I personally don't mind it. Yes, I prefer it without, but on most classes it ain't that bad. But that is a talk for a later video. As for the Capacitator totem has been made baseline, this was your Lightning Surge totem in Legion and was one of the most powerful stuns in the game, and still is, but only at 3 seconds now. And it's also another big change in BFA throughout most classes, is just giving the stun baseline to open up the other talent choices and other forms of CC, which is a great decision. In the second page, we get your Feral Spirit, same as in Legion, although without all those traits benefits like the Cleave when you use Crash Lightning, or the Empowering with the Elements thing, although there's a talent that heavily improves them, sort of in the same way, but more on that later. Flame Tongue, mostly the same, the yards have been increased from 10 to 20. The same actually happens to Rockbiter, especially good when you are running towards a boss or a mob, or something like that to set some things up ahead of your Storm Strikes or Lava Lushes. And the damage is no longer tied to your weapon's attack speed. Lava Lush got a slight higher Maelstrom cost, is now at 40 instead of 30, but as for the rest is the same. And you get a cool new animation with it, although might be defeats weapons, but I hope not. And Rockbiter got that 20 yard increase, like I said, and generates slightly less Maelstrom, because again, your traits improve that, and they are gone. As for your Storm Strike, your big hitter is now slightly cheaper at 30 Maelstrom instead of 40, so they just kinda traded the cost between Storm Strikes and Lavalashes. As for the rest, they work in the same. Like Lavalash, it feels like they got a new animation which looks badass, but I might be wrong, might be exactly the same one as in Legion. I haven't played Shaman in a while. Tremor Totem makes a comeback. Yes, it is a classic. Not sure why it was removed in the first place, but is on a 1-minute cooldown, stays for 10 seconds, and it essentially removes fear, charm, or sleep effects from the party or raid members within 30 yards. Very cool to see back, and again, more utility for your Shaman. And yeah, for your passives, state also, you get your Stormbringer for those Storm Strike procs, although the ones that you use now with the proc are 100% free instead of 50% of the cost, and of course triggering no cooldown for all that delicious spam. Wind Fury, again the same for those extra melee attacks, and in turn more Maelstrom, which you generate naturally and obviously with things like Rockbiter, and so is your mastery all the same. As for Stormlash, if you're wondering, it was removed entirely, was kind of boring anyway, so there. So yeah, as you can see, mostly all the same as in Legion, with those minor tweaks, if you will. So now let's take a look on your talents, like your main spells. It just received some tweaks here or there, so now on the first tier, no more Wind Song, you get your Hot Hand still for that Lavalash proc on the Flame Tongue attacks to do double the damage and be free of cost, which is cool. In Legion, this was a fun talent to take, was just another proc to take in mind. It was just in terms of how your character evolved with Legos and tier sets and overall number crunching, it never competed with the agility that Landslide provided, unless you had that Lego bracers, I believe, that improved Lavalash's damage. So yeah, maybe it will compete here in BFA since Landslide has been removed from this tier and completely changed, and is not a super interesting proc since it's free, there's really not much thinking besides you get it and use it, so we shall see how it will work out in terms of numbers. Boulder Fist is now here, just to reduce the cooldown of Rockbiter by 15% and to deal 20% more damage. Kinda boring, yeah, but this combined with your new Landslide, which is on the second tier, makes it a bit better. So Landslide now makes your Rockbiter have a 20% chance to increase the damage of your next Storm Strike by 100%, so doubling it. So you really want that Boulder Fist for more Rockbiters. It's another proc, which you have loads of them in Enhancement, and is kinda taking what Tempest did in Legion, which is now gone. So again, it's a bit more RNG, but nothing that will change your gameplay too much. You use what you need either way. And going back to the first tier, you also get Lightning Shield, which is a classic, and guess what? They actually made Lightning Shield more interesting and worth taking. I didn't know that was possible, but they did it. So now what it does is surrounds yourself with lightning for 1 hour, so like a buff, and melee attackers have a chance to suffer some damage and add a charge to your shield. In dungeons or raids, that will rarely happen. But when you Storm Strike, it also gains 2 charges, and at 15 charges, the shield causes you to deal damage with each attack and generates 100 Maelstrom over 10 seconds. And you get this Super Saiyan-like lightning around you, which looks really cool. So this will be something now for you to kinda track. It's just so when you get it, you can manage your Maelstrom better so you don't overcap with Rockbiter and whatnot. Although sometimes it does get a bit too much, especially if you combo it with your Feral Spirits, making it quite awkward. It does add an interesting twist for you to spam more Storm Strikes or Lavalashes every few seconds, changing a bit of your gameplay, which is cool. You kind of go into this more spammy type of playstyle every few seconds. Although again, sometimes it's awkward with that much Maelstrom, which is kind of a trend in Enhancement. And on the second tier, you get your Landslide, which I already talked about. Forceful Winds is now a new one. Here here kinda to replace your Doom Wind's ability, so your artifact, but is entirely passive. Wind Fury causes each successive Wind Fury attack within 15 seconds to increase the damage of Wind Fury by 100% and the Maelstrom generated by 1, and stacking up 5 times. So it's alright, it's a passive, not much you can do about it. I'm sensing though that with low haste and whatnot, so low attack speed, this isn't going to work all that great. With higher levels, however, it might potentially be good, but again, it's a passive, so whatever, you do more damage and generate a bit more Maelstrom to help with your rotation, although I would like it to also increase the frequency of the Wind Fury attacks, sort of like Doom Winds, just to make it a bit more fun and so that you can actually notice it a little bit more than just doing a bit of damage and generating slightly more Maelstrom, but hey, this is what we got. And here you also get Totem Mastery. Yeah, it comes from the elementals again and is essentially just to give you totems back. You basically get 4, each with an individual buff for 2 minutes, and nothing overly special. You get 1 Maelstrom every second, a 5% damage increase on Storm Strike, 10% damage increase on Lava Lashes, and an extra 2% to trigger Wind Fury attacks. And it's alright, it's just a passive buffs. But basically, Landslide works great with Boulder Fist, Totem Mastery with Hot Hand, mainly for the increase on Lava Lash, and in general seems to be better for AoE as well, again due to the damage increases for the cleaves with your Storm Strikes and Lava Lashes. And the Maelstrom provided is good overall, especially if you have Fury of Air later on, and the new Elemental Spirits. More on that in a bit. Forceful Winds is the one with the least synergy and seems to be very gear dependent. Doesn't seem to work that well without haste, so we'll see. Third tier, we just get some utility or survivability, a Spirit Wolf improving your Ghost Wolf, just giving a higher movement speed and 5% damage reduction every second while you are transformed, stacking up 4 times, so fairly decent, mainly for raiding, so you just can go into Ghost Wolf to take less damage. Earth Shield, yep, it is not back and for all Shaman specs, which is a bit odd, but hey, you can place it on yourself or any other member, and so you can place it on the tank and do some off healing, and it will increase the healing on the target by 10%, which is actually really good, and then healing them for an amount when they take damage on 9 charges. Then it just needs to be reapplied. So on yourself, it does make you a little less squishy, or well, makes you heal yourself, which kind of helps with the squishiness. And I know that's a problem in Enhancement, that we are really squishy, so this helps a bit, especially if we solo. And besides that, I just like combining this with Lightning Shield, simply because how cool it looks having these 2 elemental orbs around me. I don't know, I just like it. And then you get Static Charge to improve your stun. The cooldown gets reduced by 5 seconds for each enemy hit, up to 20 seconds, so yeah. Next, what do we get? Searing Assault is also a new one. Flame Tongue now causes the target to burn over 6 seconds, so it's a dot. It's a choice that you're going to be taking just for more damage and nothing else to it. That said, it only gets applied when you actually use Flame Tongue, basically meaning you want to start using Flame Tongue on cooldown, not just to refresh the buff. So there's that gameplay difference there, and another button for you to keep in mind when you are performing your rotation, which is kind of cool when you think like that. Hailstorm is still here, Frostbrands, which is your other weapon enhancement like Flame Tongue that only adds slow, but with these talents it adds damage to it. So it adds a new ability to the mix with your rotation, and the damage is still quite low and doesn't really have any synergy with your talents or abilities. It just kind of adds another button for you to click. In Legion, it had some use because of Legos, but yeah, that's not really here. Besides things like PvP, I'm not really seeing us take this unless for some reason we are gonna using Frostbrand for the slow, and might as well take this talent just for it to do some damage. That said, there is one artifact trait that I do have that grants mastery when dealing frost damage, so maybe with things like that, it might change the way you think about this talent, maybe. Overcharge also also still here to make Lightning Bolt part of your rotation, so kinda like Hailstorm, adding a new ability for you to click. And did I say Hailstorm or Hailstorm? It's Hailstorm, I think. Consuming up to 40 Maelstrom to deal 1200% more damage. So yeah, a pretty big hit, but adds a 10-second cooldown. This was a fun talent to take in Legion. It kinda gives you a range ability that you can use and kinda change your rotation to fit that Lightning Bolt, which would hit harder than a Storm Strike. Problem with it is that, again, like Hailstorm, there was no synergy, just made your rotation more cluttered, and here still feels the same, sadly. But we shall see on live and all of those sweet numbers if it's actually worth taking. Next, we get our mobility sort of things, although Nature's Guardian is here also. When your health is brought below 35%, you instantly heal for 20% of your maximum HP. Cannot occur more than once every 45 seconds, so like Spirit Wolf or Earth Shield, just helping our squishiness. Feral Lunge is still here for that charge, and Windrush Totem for that sprint buff, which can be really useful, like in Legion. On the following tier, everything stayed the same. A Crashing Storm for that easy AoE choice when AoEing, making our Crash Lightning at a pool, just damaging over time. Fury of Air still seems to be your go-to for AoE and, well, everything really, which then drains 3 Maelstrom every second to deal damage. However, at these low levels it is a bit hard keeping it up, but with gear and whatnot it will get better. And remember, you get Totem Mastery to help there, so it will end up costing 2 Maelstrom every second instead of 3, since that is always giving you 1. Or the Lightning Shield also helps there, since it's constantly giving you a lot of Maelstrom every few seconds. Sundering suffered a small change. It now sort of stuns instead of the knockback, which is cool because the knockback could sometimes move mobs away from AoE, which was a little annoying, but is more CC for those delicious mythic pluses. And final tier, you get your Ascendance, mostly the same as in Legion, your big cooldown to just do a lot of damage during that window for those big Storm Strikes. You know what it does. Just the cost reduction was reduced, is now at 60% instead of 80% on those Storm Strikes. And I can imagine if you can get Forceful Winds to proc during its window to be pretty decent from that bypass armor bonus, especially since the durations also align perfectly. And things like the new Landslide to increase that Storm Strike damage even further, so you're just gonna be weaving it in between your Storm Strikes for a chance at that damage increase. Just big old bursts in general. Earthen Spike still here also and stayed the same. A bit more interesting than Descendants in my opinion, like it was in Legion, as it basically creates this window where you do 20% more damage on most abilities, so physical and nature, anything besides Lava Lash, which is fire, but things like Storm Strike and Rockbiter or even Fury of Air benefit from it. So it's gonna work best with Landslide again and Boulder Fist talents, basically fitting as many Storm Strikes as you can during its window. This is the kind of talent that is constantly on your mind, so you can plan your way around it to make the most out of it, just like in Legion, so I'm glad to see it still present. It's just kinda sad that you lost Doomwinds to combine with it, but hey. And now we get a new talent called Elemental Spirits, and at first I thought it was just like your trait, your doggies get better and that's it. But nope, yeah, it uses the same graphics, but is far more interesting. First of all, it reduces the cooldown of them by 30 seconds and causes them to be imbued with fire, frost, or lightning, enhancing your abilities, yours, not the doggies themselves, which basically means whatever element you get on those same doggies, you actually get different effects. So the fire doggy will give you 20% more Lava Lash damage and adds a dot based on the damage that it did. So if you get the fire doggy to proc when you use your feral spirits with Hot Hands and Totem Mastery talent, is actually gonna be really good for even bigger Lava Lashes and the bigger dot. The lightning doggy will in turn boost your Storm Strike and Wind Fury by 100% more damage. Yep, 100%. Now imagine that combined with Landslide for an example, or even Forceful Winds. Again, if you are able to combine this, if you prepare ahead and have some luck with your RNG, that will be great damage indeed. And the Frost Doggy is the most boring one, a poor little one, as it makes you do some frost damage on attacks and adds a slow. Yeah, adds no synergy at all. But basically, this talent not only adds an interesting twist to the way you deal damage, and the cooldown is really short, so you're gonna have it rather frequently, but also the way you think about your talents, even though it does create a synergy with most of them. And it can potentially change a bit of your thinking, because if you get the Fire Doggy, you might put a little more focus on Levelage, or a Storm Strike to a Lightning Doggy, although the extent of what you can do is a bit limited to your current availability of abilities in terms of cooldowns, or procs, or even Maelstrom. All of that said, it is a fun talent to use, adds an interesting dynamic to Enhancement, and is really cool looking. Although I feel Earthen Spike, for example, could be a safer bet for single targets, as it can be really RNG based, almost like Roll the Bones from Outlaw for Enhancements, because, you know, getting 2 Lightning Doggos, for an example, wields great results, as the buffs actually stack for huge Storm Strikes. And on top, you can even combine, say, a Landslide proc to increase it by 300%. That's huge. Or even the fire ones for big lava lashes, and again if you have a hot hand proc. But the frost ones are a bit crap, and all of that can happen at random. You might get one fire and one frost, so your storm strike damage is gonna suffer dramatically, especially something like your opener, so it can be really frustrating using these talents. So yeah guys, that's the BFA's Enhancement. It hasn't changed much, it still plays about 80% the same as in Legion, so you feel like it there, you would like it here also, even with those minor tweaks, as long as your DPS numbers actually get fixed. The big changes are on the talents, like the breaking of Landslide is Beasting and stuff like that, in place of actually adding some more interesting choices, like the new Lightning Shield, the new Landslide, Hot Hands, the Totems, or the new Feral Spirits. All of that will change a bit of how you're gonna play it, which is cool to see, but again, a lot of RNG. As for gameplay, it still has a good amount of RNG, as you probably notice, a lot of it in fact, and is still very proc based with Stormbringers, the new Landslide, or Hot Hands, or even the new Empowered Doggos. So on that front, it can be annoying. But overall, taking that aside, and if you actually get decent procs and a good RNG, it does feel fluid and engaging as ever, with all the setting up you could do in Legion, and of course all the management of the procs and your Maelstrom, with the constant thinking of what you should be pressing next, which is what made Enhancement so fun. But what Enhancement is needing right now is just some buffs to its damage. Like I said in the beginning, they feel really weak on that department. I don't really like to touch on that because numbers can change easily in beta, and I mainly want to touch on how it feels. But yeah, right now Storm Strike hits like nothing, in fact now counts as a physical, not nature damage. So it makes it quite lackluster, and in turn your decisions on talents and your rotation can be a bit weird. I mean, my highest DPS ability is melee attacks, so auto attacks. But again, this is beta. And you still get these weird moments where you just get overburdened with resources, which can feel weird again and lackluster, especially with combos of talents that are focused around Maelstrom. As for your AoE, it's still very much based on cleaving, so if you dislike that in Legion, there isn't nothing new for you here. You also gain a bit more utility with the Tremor Totem and the Earth Shield on top of what you already had, which is really useful, especially for Mythic Plus, since your AoE is not overly great. So yeah, guys, do let me know what you all think of BFA's enhancements. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to get more beta videos, and check out my Patreon if you wish to support the channel. As always, thank you for watching, have a fantastic day everyone, and I'll see you all next time. See ya!